It is time now to bring in our State House insiders. Antoine Seawright, our Democratic strategist, Dave Wilson, our Republican strategist. First, let's talk about the ongoing budget negotiations over at the State House with this conference committee. 3 lawmakers from the Senate, 3 lawmakers from the House trying to hash out differences here, Dave. What's the holdup?
We've got a budget that is north of $10 billion. And the real argument right now appears to be about $95 million. The Speaker of the House wants that money set aside for some commerce and some economic development projects that are possibly coming down the pike. The Senate is not looking for that. They want to have a greater level of control of what happens with that $95 million. And so as negotiations go back and forth, they're at a stalemate right now. They've at least, JR, had some level of continuing resolution. The government will not be shutting down in South Carolina, but they don't have a plan as of yet because they were supposed to have come back on Tuesday, and we don't have a date yet when they will.
Look, there's an old hip hop song that says "More money, more problems." I think that's what people are experiencing as it relates to the budget negotiations in South Carolina. I think at this point it's not even a partisan discussion; it's a priority discussion, and I very much so am confident that there will be some resolve, but that resolve will come at the expense of some constituency. Let's hope and pray it's not the rural South Carolina. Let's hope and pray it's not the minority community in South Carolina. Let's hope and pray it's not state workers. Let's hope and pray it's constituencies that have traditionally been left out and left behind. We certainly need jobs. We certainly need opportunity. We need education. We need all those things, but we need to make sure that the benefit of whatever comes out of our budget benefits everyone, not just a certain segment of the state.
And that's the place that it really comes down to the fact, JR, that there are monies that are very often set aside by states to go and do recruitment work to bring other industries in. You think about what happened with BMW, what happened with Scout, what's happened with Google, what's happened with Volvo. These are state dollars that very often get set aside to do some of the work that has to be done because the long-term effects of those businesses coming into the area has a very big mushrooming effect over the years.
Well, let's talk about early voting. 1 day left for early voting for the runoff races on Tuesday. Antoine, hearing anything about voter turnout out there?
When you have 13% turnout statewide and on a traditional election day, you can only imagine what the turnout is projected to be or will likely be in a runoff scenario. There's certainly some competitive runoff races that will largely decide who's going to represent these constituencies for the next 2 or 4 years, depending on the scenario. And so I hope that people will feel motivated to go out. I hope people will feel engaged and involved. But also, I hope by just our conversation here, people know that there is a runoff taking place because you would be surprised the number of people who may not be paying attention enough to know that there's a runoff taking place. And how you can find out more information is www.scvotes.gov, and that will show you if there's a runoff in your area.
So think about it from this standpoint. Think about your neighborhood where you live right now. You voted and none of your neighbors around you did. That's about what it was like on primary election night. About 13% of folks showed up. When we look at that, JR, and we go, okay, not everybody who voted last time may have a runoff. To Antoine's point, go to scvotes.gov. You can put in your name, your address, your date of birth, and you will be able to pull up your sample ballot to know exactly who's going to be running in your areas. There are 2 major state Senate races that are going on just in Lexington County alone. You've got Katrina Shealy up against Ralph Kennedy, and then you've got Billy Garrett up against Charles Baumgartner. That's going to be some really tight races, but that's going to really be all about voter turnout on Tuesday. Early voting ends tomorrow.
All right, we are a week away from the first presidential debate, one of the earliest presidential debates that I can remember. Antoine, are you still sticking to the idea that the former president may not show up next week?
Till it happens, I have to stick to that notion. I hope he will show up because I think conversation and debate is certainly important for the process. It's certainly good for democracy, and it will give the candidates a true opportunity to let the American people know where they stand on the issues and defend their record. Because this is the once, at least in my lifetime, we have 2 people who served in the office for at least 4 years, and there are receipts, as we say in my neighborhood, for them to talk about what they've been able to do.
All right, Dave, your former President Trump, next week you've got a chance to appear with the current President of the United States on that debate stage. What do you do if you're Donald Trump?
You don't do what you did in the very first debate, and it's talk over him. You've got to start showing some level of presidential deference, respect. Respect for the office, I think, is one of those things. People want to hear what differentiates you from the person who's currently in office right now. Donald Trump has a record of what it is that he accomplished and did during his years from 2017 until 2021. Joe Biden has a record of what he's done over the last 3.5 years. Let the records speak for themselves. They have a lot to be able to say, and they can both tout some major wins that they've had. You know, what's happened with our U.S. Supreme Court and how it has a very different way of approaching things now. JR, is a huge thing to be taking a look at as a success for Donald Trump. So that's really what the comparison really has to be about.
Antoine, what does President Biden have to do?
Well, I think the president has to talk about his record. I think he has to put some muscle memory to the former president and all the things that come along with him. I also think he has to paint a vision for the future and what that looks like. Of course, the opportunity to push back on the lies and the misinformation that will come from the former president will be a must do. But there's also some to dos that Joe Biden has to do. And part of that is really framing the narrative about what's at stake in this election. The recent polling at Fox News just indicated democracy is a top of mind thing. If Donald Trump is what most people agree an existential threat to democracy as we know it, the president has to be very intentional and bold about defining that narrative for the American people.
I'll be very honest on this front, JR. I get really tired of everybody trying to define something or another. I mean, the reality is, and folks at home, you understand this, you want people to talk about the issues instead of talking about each other. Let's have a real debate about where the direction that things need to be going in America. I mean, that's the thing. I can guarantee you we can start putting the bets on it right now. I'm sure there are numbers and odds already running in Las Vegas over the number of times we're going to talk about the number of convictions or the number of failures or this, that, and the other. And so let's really start talking about issues and stop talking about personalities.
Dave, I think that's BS for you to say that. I think it's BS because Donald Trump is your party's nominee. You can't talk about policy because not one person in your party can articulate what his policy position were or what they're going to be. He is a personality driven figure. That's who he is. And so you can't say he cannot be defined because the person ultimately dictates the office, which dictates the policy, which ultimately dictates the politics. If it was the other way around, I can surely as hell be convinced that Donald Trump would be doing it and your party would be doing it too.
All right, Antoine Seawright. By the way, he's in the back seat of an Uber. He is not driving that car. Dave Wilson, guys, as always, thank you so much. Stay with us.